Hey everyone, I'm TheChosenOneLegend here, as always joined by my co-host.
Hi, I'm Kai, also known as Fascurreyn.
And welcome back to the BunchaJokahs podcast. Is that the first time I've messed up the intro? We're sticking with it anyway. In this podcast, I lasted like 3 or 4 years without, so hey ho, it's not too bad. But in this podcast, we talk about video game news and Nintendo highlights and what we've been playing. And there may not be a lot this month, but hey, if it's a shorter one, that works because, Kai's on holiday, I'm in the boiling hot loft room right now, so we'll just see with it and hope the madness doesn't take over. It's already off to a solid start, but how are you doing, Kai? How are things with you?
Yeah, I'm good. I mean, I want to say it's warm out here, though. It's warm everywhere this time of year.
Yeah.
Doing good. Not many things to talk about, but with how we do things, that'll probably mean this is like an hour long or something.
Every
That's
time.
how we are. So
There
yeah, it should be
will
a good one.
Yeah, and there will of course be timestamps in the description below if you want to check out different parts of the podcast. But let's get things started with our first segment, Can't Have a Podcast Without News Baby, where we go over the news highlights of the month. And I did pick out 3 for you. First of all, who is Emio? That was a weird thing that Nintendo just dropped out of nowhere. And before we get to the actual reveal itself, what are your thoughts on like just their marketing for that when they just dropped this like thing on Twitter and YouTube of like a creepy guy with a bag on his head? Like everyone was so confused, right?
Yeah, everyone was like, "Oh my god, Nintendo new first-party IP that's a horror game."
Hmm.
And to be honest, I understand the hype for that because when they were like, "Oh, we're going to be doing a first-party Nintendo, like a third-person shooter game," everyone was like, "Is this going to work?" And then Splatoon 3 is now a huge game, and Splatoon is a huge series.
Good
So I
point.
think people have got that trust of like, damn, they're actually trying to make a new horror series. This looks really creepy and really cool, and I was personally on board with it too. I'm not a huge fan of horror games, but I
Hmm.
also think that sort of thing's really cool. So I understood a lot of the hype surrounding it when that was all we saw. Is like, oh my god, this is on the official Twitter. What's happening? So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Initial thoughts were, oh, it looks really cool.
Yeah, it's a clever way of doing it, and I know some people got annoyed that they were let down with what it was, and I can understand, like, if the misinterpretation of what they were showing you, but even still, it's hard to deny it's good marketing because it got so many more eyes on this small visual novel, like rare item from Nintendo's backlog that most people have never heard of. Like, no
Yeah.
eyes would be on it if they didn't do it in this way. If this was in just a direct, like the one we had last month, it probably would have been forgotten, skipped over by most people with Zelda and all that. But I think this was the perfect way to advertise it, really. And
Yeah,
hmm,
like you say, no one would have really looked at it before, and then that happened, and everyone's looking at it even now. Because
hmm.
I mean, news is slow for one, but also to have that be the opening for it is great. And I think some people have been disappointed because it's like, oh, it's not a first-party IP, but at the same time, it's a sequel to quite a favorited series, so it's also not a bad outcome, just a different one to what a lot of people expected. They were hoping for something new perhaps, and then it was just like I don't know, Emio,
Yeah.
why would you do this to me? It's like,
You have stolen my horror game away from me.
okay.
But yeah,
Yeah,
it's it because what we actually got, of course, it's Famicom Detective Club, the Smiling Man, I think it's called, a new game in the series,
yeah,
which is the first new game since the NES days, which is kind of wild. It's because we did get the remasters or remakes of the original two a few years back, and this is just sort of a continuation of that. But I just think that's really cool that they can bring back, a series that's been gone for that long and have it make this comeback. And I am interested. Like, I don't know when I'm gonna get around to it because visual novel backlog. I'm already going through Ace Attorney and Danganronpa right now, as you know. More on that later. And I feel like you probably can just start with 3, but whilst 1 and 2 exist on the Switch, I kind of want to go through them all. So don't know when I'll ever get around to it. But I like they're bringing back this kind of thing. It looks like an interesting concept. Like the whole idea of like sort of this serial killer with like this creepy mask bag on their head thing. It definitely fits the vibes, and yeah, one day I'll get to it. But I don't know. What about you, Kai? Do you have any interest in this?
To be honest, it's not a series I've like ever looked into. I didn't even know it
Mm,
was a visual novel series until you told me
yeah,
some other time. I genuinely had no idea. So, it's something I might have to look into because I do like my detective games and my visual novels and all of that. Anything investigation based is cool. So, yeah, I might actually have to look into this. But as of right
yeah.
now, no knowledge or anything.
I think one thing that sort of hurts the getting into it is that to buy the two games, and you are getting two games for granted, but it's like a full £50 on the eShop, and I don't think it really goes on sale much. And it's quite, when you think you can get like three Ace Attorney games for like 20 quid on a good day, two are basically NES games that are apparently quite archaic, even though they've been upscaled and whatnot. They've redone visuals. It is quite a lot of
Yeah,
an asking price, so that's kind of the one thing. If it, I'm hoping maybe it would be smart for them to like put them on sale just before the third game comes out. I feel like that would be the
I
best
agree.
way for them to sort of make some money on this, and I'd probably be tempted to pick it up at that point. But we'll wait and see. And you never know. Like if they're bringing back Famicom Detective Club, maybe some more NES stuff. Maybe Ice Climbers gets a modern game. Like not a horror game, although that would be interesting. Now that I think about it,
Yeah,
because
no, there's a lot of options, but either way, I mean, yeah, what a great use of marketing. I think they really hit the nail on the head with getting an audience for it. So good on them.
absolutely. And speaking of sort of the big marketing things, we are getting on the big, well, not a beginning this time, an ending for Splatoon 3. Because they're going heavy to sort of promote the Grand Festival, which I don't know if they've said as much, but it seems to me this is going to be the final Splatfest of Splatoon 3. They're getting new amiibo for it, they're bringing all three idol groups together for this event, and the theme for this is past, present, and future. Now, we both got Splatoon 3 at launch, and obviously, Kai, you dropped off it a few years back. I dropped off it like a
Yep.
month after the game released. So I don't know if any of us are playing this. Do you plan to take part in this and go back for the final one, Kai?
Honestly, before you mentioned it, I didn't even know that it was happening like
Yeah.
this, or at least I forgot. Yeah, it was weird because I played the game for like over a year straight. Every single day almost. I had like
Mm,
over 300 hours. And then it was like, yeah, this is getting repetitive, and I just haven't played it since
yeah.
after putting that much time into it. So I haven't been keeping up really at all. But it does sound like it could be the last Splatfest if they're bringing them all together. The only other thing I would imagine is, I don't remember exactly when the release date of Splatoon 3 was. I might have to check quickly, but
It
it was
was
around this time,
it was September,
wasn't
and
it?
I think this is releasing in September. They announced it in advance because it's like the big marketing push for it. Um,
So it would make sense to be the last one for that reason. Yeah, it kind of brings
yeah.
it to a close. And I mean, as we know, the final Splatfest can have quite an impact on things, like Splatoon
Yes.
2's Chaos versus Order having an impact on the third game. And I still have my crackpot theory that
Hmm.
it was always rigged for Chaos to win, because Chaos is an obviously better theme for a Splatoon sequel.
Yeah,
Um,
I could see
I'll
that.
be honest, I don't even think Splatoon 3 like leaned into the chaos aspects that much outside of the new idols.
Hmm.
Um, but like, yeah, I just think it would make so much more sense for chaos to be order, and I thought it was maybe rigged. Not that I have an issue with it. And I'm
Hmm.
sort of wondering, is this one going to be rigged in a direction too? The,
Well,
the question is which direction, I don't know, but that's my theory.
yeah, because it's the ones we've got are past, present, and future, and that is like that's a pretty good idea if you're going to like set the theme for the next game and have three options. Like that definitely
Yeah.
fits well. But what one would be like the popular one, or how would they handle it exactly? Is it's tough to say because I feel like if you went past, you could. Well, I feel like almost like what we've got with Splatoon 3 with the chaos would fit past in a way, that kind of less
Yeah,
lawless
prehistoric.
society. And the same way that, if they did future, then like a futuristic society could have been what we got for order. So those two I feel like you could come up with easy themes for them in a sense. Present, I don't know exactly how you'd build a game around that. Like, would it? You can't just say, "Oh, we'll just do more of the same." Do you have any ideas? Because I'm struggling to think what would work for that one.
It's tough.
Yeah.
So, yeah, past, like you say, is kind of like the chaos route. And this is going to be a wild comparison, but it can apply to a lot of things. Is they might even go with Splatoon the route that Plants vs Zombies did, of all things.
Okay.
With both their mainline sequel and their Garden Warfare game sequel, where in both of them the theming became going throughout time. So they always had a level that was based on, like, you know, the dinosaur era, then a stage based on medieval, a stage based on, like, ancient pirates or whatever. You know, Dark Ages, Egyptians, all of that. Like, so they have all these different kind of settings that are very easy to make ideas around.
Right.
And I wonder that if past wins, maybe they do that with Splatoon, where we get very, very thematic levels around that. That's just an idea. Present, I have no idea whatsoever. Maybe, who knows, we might get another game with Ouroboros and Mobius for all we know.
Oh, the Endless Now!
Genuinely, that could happen. It wouldn't surprise me too much. It would be very funny. And Future does kind of give me Side Order vibes. And I'm not really sure what else they would have unless this next game is focused even more on, like, high-tech, even though they already kind of do that. So I don't know, maybe it's not rigged and maybe I'm crazy, but I do definitely think Splatoon 2's was. And very interested to see what actually happens with it, like what the purpose of this is.
Yeah, it will be interesting, like, and of course technically it doesn't have to mean, like, you know, past means it's set in the past, you know, like how the first game did it was there were the two idols and it affected the story mode basically. So it could just be it doesn't have to affect the whole setting. It could just affect the story mode, you know, for example. But, you know, whether the story mode is sending you back to the past with and exploring, like, the Octolings are invading there or whatever. Or so, exactly how this will play out, it's impossible to say at this point. But it's I think it's like a good pick, for one. And I will be intrigued. I don't know which one, like, is it usually one idol wins? Like, is it usually like everyone votes for Shiver or something? Is that how it goes?
It's in Splatoon 3. It's been that Fry never wins.
Okay, I'm not sure which one's
Fry has won maybe one or two Splatfests.
Okay, well, I'm sorry for whichever one of past, present, and future Fry is, but the other two, we'll have to wait and see. But that is...
Yeah, I would assume... Oh no, I've just had a look, so Squid Sisters is the past, Off the Hook is present, and Deep Cut is the future. So they are the whole groups are involved.
Right. That is interesting then. Will people, like...
Yeah.
I don't know how people will vote. I mean, obviously, it's the games themselves. It's not just the most popular, but that's part of it. So, I don't know who's more popular out of those, of the three groups, you know. I think maybe the Squid Sisters being the classic, but it's hard to say.
Yeah, and there is also the idea that this might not be the final Splatfest at all. For all we know, there could actually be more, and we just don't know it because it's not technically been confirmed anywhere.
Very
so
true.
I guess we'll see. We'll keep track of it. Maybe take part. I don't know. I'd have to update the game. I don't know what the file size is.
Yeah, we're all sort of putting our stock on, like, yeah, this is like the final one. But yeah, you're right. Maybe it isn't. Maybe the actual true final, you know, the final festival to end it all and predict the next game has the theme of, like, I don't know, pizza, pasta, or noodles, and that's what everyone's predicting the next game for.
Deep.
That would be intense. I feel like maybe that would be a better idea now that I mention it. But until then, we'll have to wait and see on that one. Of course, when we find out whether it's the final one and when we see the results, we'll talk more on it then. But for now, the only other bit of news I have for this month is sad news, really. It seems to be, I don't know if this came out officially or it seems to be more rumours and sort of people, industry reports, is that we are no longer getting Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games. The last one we got, I believe, was to tie in with the Japanese Olympics. We haven't had one this year, and it's kind of sad to see the series go. Like, I honestly have not owned one since 2008, so I can't really claim to be like a mega fan supporting the series here.
That was the first one.
I know. I played a lot of the other ones at Friends, like 2012, my friends owned and that. And I know you've done a bit of that on stream, right, if I recall correctly.
Yeah.
But it's weird that when I don't care about the Olympics in real life, so that's literally the only way I follow the Olympic Games is through Mario and Sonic. So it's kind of the end of an era, I guess. Apparently they ditched it to try and look up NFTs instead, which of course they did.
Yeah, it's typical, isn't it? But I don't know. Maybe there's something to do with the sales or whatever. I don't know how the last one did.
Mm.
Um, yeah, it is sad, like you say. I mean, so personally, I own the original 2008 one on both Wii and DS because they made both versions for a lot of them.
Yes.
And then I also own 2010 Vancouver and 2012 London. I played a ton of all of them. That was my childhood.
Yeah.
Um, all very fun games, cool party games. So it's sad to see it stopping, but at the same time, I do think they've probably fallen off in the last couple of years in terms of how interested people are in them. They definitely don't seem to be garnering the same attention as they used to.
I think back in the day when we were obviously, the Switch does have Joy-Con and all that, but when it was like the motion controls were the big gimmick everyone wanted to do, it made sense. It was thriving in that era with both the DS and its touchscreen and the stylus, and the Wii with its Wii remote. But now we're sort of getting to that era where people tend to go off that now a bit more. People kind of just tend to want more classic games. It's like how a lot of the Mario Party games recently have sort of taken out the motion mini games. I know the new one's bringing a few back in there, but it does seem to be shifting. And to be frank, Mario and Sonic would be boring as shit without the motion controls, So or at least the style of stuff. So it kind of makes sense that they've probably done everything they can with the series, but it is sad to see it go. And I kind of,
It is.
it's kind of surprising we haven't got another Mario and Sonic crossover at this point, like an RPG game or something. Like that would be perfect. Just take this opportunity to do something else with Mario and Sonic crossover, because they are two of the biggest icons in gaming history. It's kind of cool to see them, battle it out. But I guess we have Smash for that, so that'll have to do.
Yeah, no, I mean, it is like you say, it's a good duo at this point. So, I mean, maybe they're cooking something. Who knows? Maybe they've been developing something different, knowing that this was going to happen. Or maybe it's done. I guess we'll have to see. That might be a thing for the new console.
That's a good point. Yeah, Switch 2 one day. We'll get news on that eventually. But not this month, because we are officially done with news. We have nothing else unless we wanted to really scrape the bottom of the barrel. So let's just move on to our final segment of the podcast, Games Time, baby, where we talk about games we've been playing. And Kai, why don't you start us off with a game that you've been playing this month?
Okay. So I've kind of got two this month that I'll cover. And they do kind of work to talk about in the same episode because they go hand in hand.
Okay.
I believe. Oh, was it? Oh no, not really. No, I've gotten that wrong. No, I haven't. I'm very confused. I'm ill. So basically, there was a game that James had put in Discord. He likes to put free games in there sometimes if, like, they're free on Steam for a limited time or whatever.
Yes.
And one of them was a game called Islands of Insight, which is kind of like an open world puzzle game. You've got this world you explore, and there's I think there's 30 different puzzle types that are all logic puzzles and things like that. Very difficult to describe, but yeah, all different sorts of puzzle types gets your brain going. A lot of them are very snappy puzzles that you can complete in under a minute. So they're very easy to get through. Varying difficulties from instant solve to man, this one actually took me 5 minutes. It's a very good game, I'll say. And yeah, I mean, it does a number on my computer, I'll say that. It's
Really?
very heavy to run.
Huh.
Yeah, because it's I don't know, I guess takes up a lot of power because it's like a full open world. It's also online multiplayer technically.
Oh,
when you join the game, you join a server with 10 other people. Maybe.
Right. Okay, because when you said puzzle game, I was thinking the latent puzzles kind of thing. That kind of, I was like, how is that taxing on your computer? But
I should have clarified. Yeah, so it's huge open world with everything happening live.
Oh, that's fascinating.
And then there are there are some hub areas where anyone can complete the puzzles that are there, and they reset every 12 hours or something, maybe.
Oh, okay.
Where you can do daily stuff, and then there are also separate islands you can jump to that have their own gimmicks going on or themes. Different puzzle types, different things. My favorite personal puzzles are ones that where you can't necessarily answer the puzzle on its own. You have to look around the environment to find the clues. One basic example of the puzzles is a lot of them come in the form of you get a grid where you can put black and white squares in on like this 2D grid.
Yeah.
And it'll ask you to, complete the pattern or complete this, following these logic rules. And one of my favourites is that you have to look in the environment, and you'll kind of, if you look at it in the right way, you'll see that you almost have that grid in the environment around you, and then you have to apply that into the puzzle. I'm probably not explaining it right, but
no, I see what you mean.
It's very
clever.
clever. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a very clever game. All the puzzles have been really engaging, and it's a good one to just open up for an hour or two whenever I've not got much else to do. It's been very fun to go around. The multiplayer is honestly minimal. It's just you can walk up to people and emote in front of them, and that's it. I kind of think the online isn't necessary at all.
Yeah.
The graphics are good. I think they're not like really high res, but they are fine for me. And yeah, overall, I just like the style. I've not paid attention to the story in the slightest. I think there's meant to be a story that's told through like lore and bits of dialogue, but it's all optional. There's not been a single bit of mandatory story.
That's cool.
So I think it's just meant to be there to add a bit of world building rather than actual story per se. I don't know how much it's on Steam for now, but it does cost money, maybe like 30, 40 quid I guess. So I'm very glad I got it for free, because it's honestly been really fun. So anyone who just wants like an open world puzzle game, I would definitely recommend it. It's been a lot of fun, and I'll probably just continue to play it for quite some time whenever I've got nothing else on.
No, yeah, that definitely does sound interesting. I feel like I would need to be in the right mood for it, because otherwise, I'm literally, I'm not going to get to this month because I'm still partway through playing it. But I was playing Persona 5 earlier, and there's a palace where you have to like remember numbers, and the gears were turning in my head. Like, I can do this. I can figure out basic maths and remember numbers. So it put me to the test, but it does sound kind of fun. The way you described it sounds a lot more interesting than I first thought. So yeah, I'll definitely maybe have a look at that one.
Yeah, I would stream it if it wasn't going to kill my computer.
Yeah. Get Kai a new computer one day.
This one's good. That's a thing. It's just like, I don't know. I don't have a PC necessarily. That's all it is.
Yeah, that's pretty much. We'll get James build you one, of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure he won't mind. For the channel, we can like put it off on. We can like write it off as part of the channel expenses, right? We can charge it to Samm. He handles that. So,
I'm sure. It's probably something on my end, like that I've got a setting wrong or something. You know how I am with this sort of thing.
Well, one day maybe. But as for myself, I only really have one game to talk about this month, and I'm trying to remember it because I finished it like right at the start of the month. It's one of those ones. But it did leave an impression, and that was Ace Attorney Dual Destinies. So very interesting game, and I know Kai, you've watched it, so you're familiar with the game yourself in some capacity. But it's weird because, I mean, at its core, it's Ace Attorney, and as I say every time, Ace Attorney is the exact same at its core the entire way through. Your investigation sections, your trials, wacky characters, great music, objection, hold it, it's all there. It's all great. This is probably my least favourite Ace Attorney game, I think. And that's not meaning it's bad, because it's a high bar, the rest of the series, well renowned. But it's fascinating. I feel like I could write an essay on this game, because I just find it really interesting, everything they decided to do with it compared to the previous games. First things to clarify is, it's the first 3D game, and it works really well as that. This is not Layton, where it has a very awkward transition into 3D. Like this, they got it right the first time. Everything looks great. The models still have their personality, but translated over pretty well, including characters who are in the last games who have animations directly translated over. It's not far off what you see in Great Ace Attorney, really. So they got it right from the get-go. It all looks good. Music's great with orchestral remixes of some of the classics and the new ones as well. All feels great. When it gets to the gameplay, they make some interesting changes, and I think again at its core it's the same. But one thing that I really didn't like personally was that in investigation sections, particularly, you no longer have the ability to investigate every room. It's specific rooms and you're able to investigate all four sides of it. Which, on one hand, I like having you like, hey, you can look out this entire room rather than looking awkwardly at one side of it. But it also means it takes out a lot of the flavor text and personality of, I couldn't inspect Charlie the plant, and it caused me so much pain not being able to do that. That was like the favourite thing of all the past 3 games. I'm slightly exaggerating here, but I love doing that sort of goofy flavor text. Like also things like you can't present profiles to people anymore. A lot of that flavor text is kind of gone, and it means you just sort of take a straight shot to the story. And it's still fun, of course. You know, the dialogue's still great when you're just talking to people. When you get to inspect the room, it's fun finding things and piecing them together. But whereas the previous games felt like across the investigation sections, you were piecing things together bit by bit, room by room. It's just sort of like you go through exposition, then you find everything, you solve the mystery in this one spot, and then you do more exposition. Like, it kind of feels a bit more linear in that sense.
Yeah.
Which, again, it didn't ruin it, but I wasn't as keen on. But I did like the emotion thing with Athena and her mechanic of being able to read emotions in court. It's pretty basic, but that was a fun new mechanic, at least, gameplay-wise. But when it comes to story, it's very interesting how... I'm not going to go into spoilers here, but general impressions, so timestamps if you do want to skip just in case, but I won't say any story specifics. But it's how the previous game, like, Apollo Justice comes out, and it's like, you've got this brand new character, and Phoenix is there, but he's very different, and there's this weird different tone to it, and it's this whole unique thing. And then Dual Destinies is just like, yeah, we're going to go back to what we were doing before. We're just going to do a reverse stat, basically never happened. I mean, it did happen, you know, if Apollo's here, you got, like, Trucy's still there, which is great to see, and it still has the stuff building off the last game, and it does build off certain ideas from the last game. But it kind of just... It returns, like, Phoenix especially, is just like, yeah, he's just Phoenix again. Which, I can see why they did it, because it is fun. It is fun having all 3 characters to play as. Seeing their dynamic is fun, and, you know, Phoenix still is a bit different. He still has that relationship with Apollo as the mentor, and, like, Trucy as sort of the daughter relationship. It's still there, but it is much more familiar, and I kind of thought it would have been more interesting for them to build off of just Apollo moving forward. Like, I don't know. I feel like maybe that would have been more interesting. What do you think on that, Kai?
I think you can kind of understand now. If you recall, when it was first announced, this trilogy, and they called it the Apollo Justice Trilogy, I looked at it and went, is it really the Apollo Justice Trilogy?
Right, I do recall that,
and it's because of Dual Destinies, where I looked at it and I was like, they're like 50-50, if not like, probably Phoenix getting more attention in this game.
I think Phoenix gets like 50%, and the other 50 is shared between Apollo and why am I forgetting her name? Athena, I think, basically.
Yeah, no, that's what I thought. So I remember looking at that thinking, that's weird. Though I guess the other 2 games do counter it in Apollo's favour a bit. I still know nothing about Spirit of Justice, by the way, or like very little, but I'm aware that it goes a little bit more towards Apollo in that game again.
That's interesting.
But anyway, yeah, no, I mean, this is the one I'm most familiar with. Not necessarily the one I think is the best, it's just, one that I can remember the most of off the top of my head. The investigations are a little strange in the way they're laid out, I agree. I think the perspective thing is cool.
That is neat.
But yeah, there is only so much you can do with that compared to exploring lots of different places back and forth. Yeah, I don't know. I liked it. Again, this is just because it was the first one for me as well. So it's like I do have a bit of bias towards it, admittedly, but I liked all the cases. A couple of them were a bit confusing at times, but overall good. The ending is mad. Of course, I'm not going to go into it, but it is pretty crazy. And I don't know. I guess the main thing I'm curious about for you is what you think on the new characters.
Yeah, like I liked the new characters. I think Athena's fun. She's kind of just like, it's almost as if Maya was a playable character in a sense. Like, there's kind of an angle of that where she's got the sort of the peppiness and compared to Phoenix and Apollo, who are generally more level-headed. Having I do another thing that I was kind of disappointed on the change. Like, I think Bobby Fulbright as sort of the new police detective is he's fun. I think I liked his music. He sort of is a cool presence, and they do some fun stuff with him later. But I kind of am a little disappointed they didn't continue with Emma from the previous game, because I really liked having her
Yeah.
in there as a detective. Like, she didn't even, maybe that's a spoiler. She doesn't even appear basically, so it's kind of a shame. I was hoping she'd at least have a cameo, but I did like generally the new cast and the new stuff they do with the story. I feel like in general the cases felt a little bit more like, a lot of them felt like they were repeating old ground in a lot of ways, and that, when you've done this many games, I imagine that's probably a hard thing to do. And every game has that thing where it's like, oh wow, they died and they're writing on the floor, you know, that it all gets used in all the games, and you get used to that kind of thing. But I feel like even like the wider story stuff to do with Athena's sort of wider story kind of felt like it was tracing old stuff we tackled in the original trilogy in some regards. So I found it a little less interesting in that way, but also like I still enjoyed it. I still had a fun time with it, and it began to lose me at the end a bit when it got crazy. But once I realised how crazy it was going, I'm like, okay, I'm on board now. This is what they're doing. It's maybe a bit less emotional than previous games. It has a bit less emotional stakes, but it's wild and it's fun. I'm like, yeah, I'm on board. So it does almost get Layton levels, but in a very specific way with like the villain, even when you think about it. But it goes that kind of silliness in a sense that Ace Attorney doesn't usually go that far. But I'm like, okay, why not? And I had a good time with it. So yeah, like it's still a very fun game, and I am fascinated to see, based on this, like what angle Spirit of Justice takes. Obviously, though, when I get to that one, you won't have any clue yourself, so I'll have to be very careful, not spoilers for there. But
Yeah, we'll see how it goes. It should be a good one. What are your thoughts on the new prosecutor? Did you talk about that?
Oh, I didn't talk about the new prosecutor. No. Yeah, I did like the new. I completely forgot. It's been a month since I played. I thought I liked him. I think he was. I don't. It's hard to say. I liked his character. I thought he was fun, but he kind of felt a bit less. There was less unique about him. Maybe it kind of felt like, just like a return to form. After Apollo Justice has like this weirdly out of nowhere, just jolly prosecutor who's just there for a good time, you know, with Clavier.
Yeah.
If that's right, is that the right name? Yeah. But anyway,
Yeah.
yeah, he was, you know, compared to that, it's sort of like, oh, we're going back to like a menacing attorney, but I don't feel like he did much more interesting compared to like, Edgeworth or Godot or whatever. I don't think he did anything particularly unique, but it was kind of fun having him as a rival, and the way his story tied up and like was intertwined within the story I did like. So, do you have a particular? I'm interested. What do you think of him, Kai? Actually, yeah.
I don't have any specific thoughts. I think he's more of like a vibes kind of person than like
Yeah.
actually doing much.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. And again, I think he appears in Spirit of Justice, though I have no idea in what capacity. I just know he's on like the title art.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, yeah, I think Blackwell's a cool character. I like the motif and all of that he's got going. Really, I mean, leaning into the edge more than they had previously.
Yes.
Which was pretty intense. I'm never a huge fan of the overly edgy characters. Like, it's never my favourite thing. But I thought it was fine. I liked how things sort of worked through the game. You know, like you say, nothing too crazy. No special thoughts in particular. Just he's cool, I guess.
Yeah, and the last thing I'll quickly mention is that there are some fun like cameos as well in there that sort of took me off guard. I won't say anything specific, obviously, but there were some really cool things they did as they sort of tied it more into like the other games. Like I was saying at the start, it's more like a classic Phoenix Wright game in a lot of ways, and that was kind of quite fun to see. So yeah, really, really good one. And I don't know when I get to the next one because I have Danganronpa 3 first of all, so we'll see how that one goes. But yeah, that was a good game. I'm very intrigued on that one, because like I know that's more separate from like 1 and 2, so in some capacity I think, but I don't really have much clue. So
yeah,
I'm definitely gonna keep an eye for that one. But that's all for me pretty much. So Kai, what about you? What's your final game you've got?
So I mentioned earlier about my two games going hand in hand in a strange way. And I mentioned how Islands of Insight had it was really heavy to run on the computer. So as a result, it took me a really long time to download because I was ready to like play it without actually having downloaded it first, not thinking it would take like that long. The download took a while, and I was like, "Oh, I'm bored. What should I do in the meantime?" let's look on the Nintendo Switch Online stuff. Let's have a look on the Game Boy Advance and see what's happening.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, I don't know, there's nothing too interesting here. Clicked on a couple of things and then immediately clicked off. And then I was like, let's like just start Fire Emblem and the Blazing Blade.
Right.
And I was like, sure, let's just try it. And I skipped all of the cutscenes and tutorials and just played like the first 3 chapters while I waited for this other game to download.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that was kind of fun. Okay, I'm done with it now. And then a couple of days later, I was like, man, I've like not really got anything else to play right now because I think I was playing. I had like nothing else that I was really playing at the time. I'd just finished Unicorn Overlord. Wait, did I talk about Unicorn? I'm sure.
Yes, you did. Yeah.
Yeah. So I just finished that, and I was like, well, I've got nothing else I'm really playing properly now. You know, Islands of Insight is good to do for a couple of hours at a time, but not, it's not like a playthrough kind of game. And I was like, let's just go back to it, and I just keep going back to it. So now I'm like, I'm not done with the game. I'm about 2/3 through it. But I feel like I'm far enough through with this kind of game that you get the vibe. It is an old game, so I can talk about it now. And yeah, the Blazing Blade. It's a fun Fire Emblem game. It's crazy that it's on the Game Boy and it's like the 8th one or something ridiculous. God, so many Fire Emblem games. But yeah, no, it's fun. It's always cool to go back to older Fire Emblem games. See how they play and if they're jank or not. It's cool to see how they structure the games and how they balance them and that sort of thing, what the story is. So I don't have too many thoughts because, again, it is like an old game, but, the story's good. I've enjoyed the story up to this point. It's not anything too crazy, but, like, I think the problem is the dialogue boxes are only 2 lines long and can maybe fit, like, 4 words on a line. So there's only so much they can do with the dialogue, but what they do is good. They make the most of the text boxes they have to make an interesting story. They have a lot of interesting, like, cool characters involved with different stories that they try and implement. Cool different maps and concepts. Nothing's, like, made me mauled yet, I'll be honest. I was expecting something to make me angry and rage quit.
That is surprising.
Yeah, so it's just been a nice experience overall. I will say I have been using Rewind, though, so maybe that's why.
Oh, yeah,
I still concede that is, like, that's maybe the best feature of all of Nintendo Switch Online, apart from, like, Mario Kart 8 Online.
I can imagine, because I've never played this one. I do want to try at some point. But on Game Boy Fire Emblem, I have Sacred Stones on the 3DS as part of the Ambassador program where they gave Ray GBA games. And I've, like, tried 3 separate times in the past, like, to start it, and not gotten very far because I, like, lose someone and I'll restart the map, but I don't want to do that right now, and then I end up not going back to it. So, this is before, classic mode and casual mode was a thing. So, having...
And the time rewinds, they're a huge thing.
Of course, yeah, I think, like, even with, like, I always play casual mode, but I still never let anyone die, usually. Because I use the rewinds and I make it work that way. Like, even that's a good point. That's a huge deal. So the fact you can basically give yourself that option is pretty neat with NSO. So I think I do want to, when I've got a sort of break in the games, I think that's a good one I do want to try. Because I do like me some Fire Emblem, and we haven't got a new one anytime at the moment. So yeah, that's a good shout actually. I should try that one.
Yeah, exactly. So it's been a very fun one to go through. Rewind has made it the experience it is. Otherwise, I don't think I would be playing it up to this point.
Yeah.
The gameplay's been like good overall. The maps have been fun. It is an interesting dynamic in how they just give you so many characters by the point you're at where I am in the game, where like over half of them just aren't being used anymore. And I'm the type who wants to level up and use every single character. And even I've conceded it's just not possible. There's not enough maps. Like there are technically like some side quests in the game, but they're like very fixed single map ones at specific points. So basically, the pool of XP in the game is limited. And if I were to spread that equally, I physically would not be able to beat it.
Yeah,
So-
I believe I've heard it basically said because older Fire Emblem expects you to let characters die. Because it's before casual
Yeah.
mode and it's before rewind. They're sort of like, yeah, you're going to, especially newcomers, gonna have people die. So they basically throw characters at you constantly to be like, this is replacing the guy that's probably just died for you, you know. So
It's
but
kind of Nuzlocke vibes, isn't it? I'm kind of
Yeah.
cool with that.
yeah, that's just true actually. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
Yeah, so
But
it's very neat. I do like the game, and I'll probably finish it in time. So yeah, it's been a fun experience. Definitely an interesting one to play alongside Fire Emblem Three Hopes, which I'll
yeah,
probably talk about next month or the one after. A cool dynamic to see like one of the older and newest games kind of at the same time. So yeah, it's been a
very
good time.
true. Yeah, that's well, that I think brings us to the end for this podcast. Been an interesting one. We still managed to push 40 minutes, and I think I'm physically beginning to melt in this loft room. So I'll wrap things up here. Thank you guys for watching. It's been fun, and of course, you can find us here on BunchaJokahs. We do a new monthly podcast first Sunday of each month discussing the news, as well as extra videos. We do things like tier lists and reactions to directs, all on YouTube or Spotify for audio-only versions of the podcast, under the name BunchaJokahs. But Kai, where else can people find you at?
Twitch.tv/Fascurreyn. I am now playing through Ni no Kuni 2, which is fun.
Indeed.
So yeah, I will be over there.
I am ready for you to, when you get to talk about this game on the podcast in a few months' time, I'm going to prepare like a
boy.
page-long rant about, I'm not even going to say its name,
Coffee.
you know who I mean.
Oh,
Yeah, shivers. But we'll
quick,
get
end,
there.
End the video. End the video.
But we will see you guys in the next one. Take care and goodbye.
See ya.